Hello, Internet. Welcome to Only Kind of Everything. And with Summer Games Fest, the Microsoft Showcase, Nintendo Direct, and the State of Play all behind us, I think it's a decent time to take a step back and go, what on earth is going on with PlayStation? I thought about originally doing kind of a reaction to each one, and admittedly just didn't get a chance to get to it. But I think this is a little more interesting because you can kind of see a philosophy change in PlayStation playing out live. During the end of Jim Ryan's tenure as the boss of Sony and the PlayStation brand, he had talked about wanting to have 12 live service games out and running by, I think, 2025. Sony has backed off on that, obviously, in part due to Jim Ryan leaving the company. And that kind of, to wrap around to why I'm pointing all of that out, look at the Nintendo Direct. Man, it has been a long time since a Nintendo Direct has hit that hard. New Mario and Luigi game, new Mario Party, a new Legend of Zelda game, albeit you play as Zelda, but still new. And news on Metroid Prime 4. We'll talk about, hopefully we'll get another video out where we talk about the Nintendo Direct and the state of Nintendo in a little bit more detail. But, again, switch over to gears. Look at what Microsoft did. Fable, Gears of War. They had these games that they're showing off going, hey, our system is definitely a contender for something you want. You want to play the new Gears of War. You want to play Fable. You want to play the new Mario. You want to play Metroid 4. They not only were exciting, but they made you go, oh, I really need this specific system. PlayStation, on the other hand, didn't really do that. You had something like Concord that came out that isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but when I'm sitting there watching it and I see the passion that these developers put into it, and I'm like, man, it looks cool. Every week there'll be a new backstory video and all this stuff that Overwatch should have done from the get-go, but at the same time, it also feels like Overwatch. And I think that's, hopefully I'm wrong, but I feel like that's going to hurt Concord in the long run. And not only that, you have the Marvel game coming out that is of the same ilk. Sony didn't have a lot to show off in terms of what a lot of people consider their bread and butter. Single-player games, these massive experiences. Which is interesting because we know that Wolverine is coming next year. We know that Santa Monica Studio is working on something. The end of Horizon Forbidden West screamed there's going to be a third game, but there's been radio silence. And I think that is really in part due to Sony's, sorry about that, guys. Sony's direction. Jim Ryan really wanted to step and say, in this corporate idea that has been going around for a while now, the live service games are the future. They are the way to make money. And man, fundamentally, I disagree with that. I think everybody sees Fortnite and this free-to-play model that turns these massive profits, and they want to go, oh, I want a piece of that. Helldivers 2 is a great example of a game that obviously Sony didn't have a tremendous amount of faith in because there wasn't a lot of campaign behind it. They didn't really put the marketing machine behind it like they could have. like they did a Final Fantasy, like they've done for Spider-Man. And Helldivers 2, I would say, is an exception to the rule. Not necessarily rule, but exception to what's been happening with these live service games that come out, these Anthems, these Marvel's Avengers that come out and just can't stand on their own 2 feet. They end up falling, and it's just not a good time. So I think that's Sony is going through, I don't want to call it an identity crisis, but this really weird situation where, now they're saying, well, we'll have 6 live service games. I don't know if Helldivers 2 is going to be accounted among those, but man, it's weird. Sony has really went into the PS4 and a lot more so the PS5 era and generation with this massive amount of momentum. If you want to look back for a second and look at going into the through the 360 versus PS3, man, Microsoft trounced them. But by the end of it, Sony started to really take some edge away. That's when you had Last of Us hit. Then you had the PS4 and Xbox One launches, and Microsoft just made mistake after mistake after mistake, and Sony just sat back and went, yeah, we don't do that. Oh, your console needs to be connected to the internet 100% of the time? Yeah, PlayStation 4 won't need that. Sony really took advantage of a lot of mistakes Microsoft made launching and capitalized, and they absolutely thrashed Microsoft all generation long. And now we're into PS5 and Series X, and Microsoft has never really recovered. Sony has had first party games or timed exclusivity on a lot of games, and they're still good. Microsoft, on the other hand, really hasn't. Halo has struggled to gain anything. The Forza games are doing well, but that's kind of it. Gears 5 I enjoyed the gameplay, but an open world Gears is hit or miss. It'll be interesting to see what Gears E-Day does with its gameplay. I'm not going to get too much into that in of itself, because that's kind of a different video. But if you look at what Sony is doing right now, it just feels, up until recently, it's felt very corporate. Oh, we want to make money, and it makes sense. A business wants to make money. But we're foregoing the single player experience for these live service games, because that's what corporate and shareholders, that's what they think is going to make the most money. And more power to these companies, but I don't want to say the average, but it feels like, generally speaking, the gaming community does not agree. They want a Baldur's Gate 3, a game that comes out and is complete at launch. None of this, DLC is cool, but none of this, well, we're holding something back for DLC. I would say God of War is the same thing. That was a complete game. The DLC that they added was very cool, but it's not integral to the story. I would criticize, Spider-Man in that aspect, that yes, you do get a full game, but you get these story beat content that probably could have been included to begin with, or at least be free. And I get it, these developers have to get paid for what they're doing. But at some point there has to be a give and take as to where the consumer isn't spending as much money because they don't feel the value of the game is there. But again, I feel like that's a deep dive topic for another day. So I'm hoping, I'm not saying Sony's had a bad year. Again, Helldivers 2 came out, Stellar Blade came out, Final Fantasy came out. Sony is having a good year. But, and I'm definitely not going to sit here and say that Sony's future is doom and gloom, because I don't think that's the case either. But I do think it is interesting that Sony's state of play felt very, very empty. They pulled out of Gamescom, which that's not exactly, I don't want to say news, because they haven't really been in the E3 style, conference style thing for a while now. But I do think that it's indicative that Sony thinks they don't have anything to really show, because the company is now in, I don't want to call it a backtrack or a cleanup, but they're definitely looking at the situation that Jim Ryan put them in, with this idea that live service was definitely the way to go. And they're going, no, I don't think so. I think Sony will recover, but it's interesting that, as consumers, we're able to watch this, almost live reaction to, the situation that the company is in, and how they're now trying to look and go, we gotta do something different, guys. But what do you think? Do you guys think that there is more to what's going on? Do you think that Sony is maybe, they were on the right course with these live service games, and they should shoot for 12? But let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all that stuff that people tell you to do at the end of a YouTube video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.